Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Now I would like to proceed our presentation today is about the classification of knowledge in Islam by Osman Bakar. First of all, my name is Mohamad Lutfi bin Lokman. My metric number 1181C33 and our group members Ismail Bin Rosli 1181C10 and Muhammad Rafhan bin Aziz 1181C21 and Muhammad bin Abdul Halim 1181C24. Nextly, that we look the objective found in this book. The objectives key to understanding the key dimension of Islamic intellectual tradition and the Islamic education system to longer discuss its role in enabling contemporary Muslim education to observe the objective of the confusion and chaos occurring the current education curriculum with blind imitation of Western model often mixed with survivor madrasah system. Nextly, as we know, knowing one of the basic of faith arkanul imdan is in Islamic in the belief in divine revelation, the recipient of the human revelation is known as the prophet of messenger of God. Muslim believe the prophet is the best messenger of God creature.
Okay, my name is Mohamad bin Abdul. Contact number 11816224. Now we move to biography of author. The author of this book is Osman Bakar. Osman Bakar is scholar, teacher, and author whose writing is known throughout many Islamic countries and by Western scholars of Islam. Dr. Osman Bakar was born in Temaluf in the state of Pahang, Malaysia. He completed his undergraduate degree with honor and MSc in Mathematics, specializing in algebra at London University. Dr. Osman Bakar served as the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Vice President of Academy, and was the first holder of the Chair of the Philosophy of Science at the University of Malaya, Kuala Lumpur, a post he held until 2001. He is one of the founding members and also served as President of the Islamic Academy of Science of Malaysia. His research interests include Southeast Asia Islam, particularly Malaysian Indonesia Islam, contemporary Islamic thought, and religion and science in the Islamic context, both political and modern. Many of his essays have appeared in numerous journals, chapters in various books, and in encyclopedias. His book, Classification of Knowledge in Islam, this book, Topic in Science and Civilizational Dialogue, among others, have been translated into Albanian, Arabic, Chinese, English, French, Indonesian, Russian, Spanish, Turkey, and Urdu. In 1994, he was awarded the honorary title of Datuk by the Sultan of Pahang and by the King of Malaysia in 2000. Currently, Dr. Osman Bakar is the Malaysia Chair of Islam in Southeast Asia, Center for Muslim Christian Understanding, and is a member of the Center Academic Council, part of the School of Foreign Service, where he teaches course of contemporary Islam in Southeast Asia, religion and science in Islam, and dialogue of civilization.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Next, I will talk about how the author wrote the book. Firstly, the author, which is Osman Bakar, wrote about the general domain of the study and the classifications chosen for the study. The author divided the book into three parts referred to different scholars, which is Al-Farabi, Al-Ghazali, and Kutubuddin Ash-Shirazi. Every part has several chapters based on their areas of study, and the author wrote about the life, works, and significance of the scholars in the first chapter in every part. At the end of the book, the author wrote about the conclusions of the book.
Part 1, Al-Farabi. Al-Farabi psychology in this relation of the hierarchy of the science. 1. First, the hierarchy is both microcosmic and macrocosmic order of reality represent many manifestations of the divine principle. The idea of the hierarchy of the science, Al-Farabi say in the road in the nature of things. Second, in the science constitute a unity because, as will be explained in chapter 3, their ultimate source is one, namely and divine intellect. This is true regardless of the intermediately agencies through with people may have acquired the science. The idea of the unity and hierarchy of the science may also be regarded as a basis for traditional of epistemology. This is true in a human society closely bound to revolution like the society in which Al-Farabi lived and though. Third, the idea of hierarchy of reality is very much alive. Thanks to the teaching of revelation, the idea is accepted as the axiomatic philosophical truth. It is evident the idea of hierarchy, so rooted in Islamic revelation, from the following teaching of the Al-Quran and Hadith. First, the Al-Quran verse the same self of the various grade in respect of value, although all of them are believed to be of divine origin. This is because they deal with different level of reality. The celebrate verse of the throne from Ayatul Kursi was described by the Prophet as the chief Sayyidah of the Quranic verses. Fourth, dimension of practical one is comprised knowledge of what Al-Farabi called involuntary intelligibles, al-ma'kulat al-irdiyat. Khams. 5. Furthermore, according to Al-Farabi, revelation is kind of cosmic intellection. He described it as the objective phenomenon which occurred when the Prophet soul is in intellective union with a supra-individual active intellect. Moreover, the imaginative faculty from the Al-Farabi, in this theory of the imaginative faculty, Al-Farabi deal with the he called the five internal sense halt al-ibtina, which is firstly the faculty of representation, second the faculty of estimation, third the faculty of memory, fourth the faculty of compositive human imagination, 5. The faculty of compositive animal imagination.
Next, Al-Farabi also discussed about the ontological and the ethical basis of the hierarchy of the sciences. This part have two different bases, which is ontological basis and the ethical basis. The first one is ontological basis. It has of four subject matters, which is metaphysics, natural sciences, mathematics, and political science. First one, the subject matter of metaphysics. This is the highest philosophical science because its subject matter is comprised of the absolute incorporeal beings which occupy the highest rank in the hierarchy of beings. The second one is the subject matter of natural science. This is the lowest of the philosophical sciences because its subject matter is comprised of terrestrial bodies which possess the lowest rank in the hierarchy of being. And the third one is the subject matter of mathematics. This one occupy a kind of intermediate position between metaphysics and also the natural science. And the last one is the subject matter of political science, which is ilmu al-madani. This subject matter investigates the various kinds of voluntary actions and ways of life, human tendencies, morals, and state of character that lead to these actions and ways of life, the ends for the sake of which they are performed, and how they must exist in humans. The second basis is the ethical basis. In this basis, Al-Farabi talked about the theory of virtue. In Al-Farabi's view, human perfection in the present life results from the acquisition of the virtues. A discussion of some aspect of his theory of virtue is necessary. In his ethical philosophy, virtue is closely related to the acquisition on the different sciences and arts. Like Aristotle, Al-Farabi divides virtues into two fundamental categories, which is the rational, nudukiyah, and ethical, khulukiyah. According to Al-Farabi, the most excellent of the virtues are the theoretical virtues that he classifies into three types: the excellence of the theoretical intellect, knowledge, al-ilmu, and wisdom, al-hikmah. The next chapter in Al-Farabi part is classification and description of linguistic science and logic. In this part, it have two part, which is classification and enumeration of the science and divisions of linguistic science and logic. The first part have 6 different classifications, which is science of language, ilmu al-lisan, logic, ilmu al-mantiq, the mathematical or propaedeutic sciences, ulum at-ta'alim, physics or natural science, al-ilmu at-tabi'i, next one metaphysics, al-ilmu al-ilahi, and last one political science, al-ilmu al-madani, jurisprudence, al-ilmu al-fiqh, and dialectical theology, ilmu al-kalam. The division of linguistic science and logic have two divisions, which is the science of language and logic. In the next chapter, Al-Farabi discuss about classification and description of the philosophical sciences. This one have 5 different classifications, which is the mathematical sciences. According to Al-Farabi, the domain of mathematics has 7 divisions, which is arithmetic, geometry, astronomy, music, optics, weights, and ingenious devices. The second one is natural science. Al-Farabi introduces this division of natural science with a definition of the discipline. It is that science which inquires into natural bodies and the accidents inherent in them, and which deals with their causes in terms of the 4 Aristotelian causes. Next one, metaphysics. Al-Farabi divides metaphysics into 3 parts, which is ontology, the principles of demonstrations, mabadi' al-barahin, and last part deals with beings that are neither bodies nor in bodies. The fourth part is political science. This is the central term of Al-Farabi's political science is happiness, which determines the nature, scope, functions, and aims of his political science. And the last one is jurisprudence and dialectical theology. According to him, jurisprudence is the art that enables man to infer the determination of whatever was not explicitly specified by the lawgiver on the basis of things that were explicitly specified and determined by him. Next, my friend will talk about second part.
Now we move to part 2, al-Ghazali. Al-Ghazali classification of seekers after knowledge. First, in the Mukin, Al-Ghazali divided the seekers after knowledge of his time into four classes, namely the Mutakallimin, the philosophers, Al-Falasifah, Ta'limi, Al-Batiniyah, and the Sufis Al-Sufiyah. Al-Ghazali also claimed that his interest in the various classes of knowledge was generated by his inquest for the knowledge of the true reality of things. The highest of this knowledge, he said, is the knowledge of God. He also recognized the Jews as the most important religious group from the point of view of the general welfare and goodness of the individual and the community in the life of the world. In this book, the author Osman Bakar discussed al-Ghazali of each of the four classes of knowledge, which the Mutakallimun, the philosophers, the Ta'limi, and the Sufis. In this discussion, the emphasis is not on the doctrine of each school, but rather on its epistemology and methodology. Epistemology is discipline that focuses on how knowledge is produced and validated, and methodology, this theory, method, technical approach to do research on any topic. Next, significance of the classification. Al-Ghazali study of the methodological claim of the four classes of knowledge enable us to establish its epistemological perspective, while affirming the superiority of the Sufi mode of knowing to all other modes. He remained attached to the Kalam perspective. He also his internal criticism of Kalam was aimed at refining the rational method of the science. Next, Al-Ghazali classification of seekers after knowledge. First, division into theoretical and practical science. Number two, division into invention, Hudui, and alternate husuli knowledge. Number three, division into religion, Sharia, and intellectual aqliyah science. And number four, division into fardu ain, mean obligatory on every individual, and fardu kifayah, obligatory on all. First, basic of the division into theoretical and practical part. In the Maqasid, Al-Ghazali divide philosophy or the science of wisdom into its theoretical and practical part. The theoretical part know the state of being as they are, and the practical knowledge deal with man action. He aimed at finding out the human activities conducive to human well-being in this life as well as in the next. Second, basic of division into prevention and eternal knowledge. Preventive knowledge, also known in Arabic Huduriyah, is knowledge is direct, immediate, intuitive, and contemplative. This knowledge also obtained by revelation and inspiration, such as prophetic knowledge, which can get by revelation and revelation, wahyu, and inspiration, ilham. And eternal knowledge is indirect, rational, and logical. Eternal knowledge and also known in Arabic husuliyah. This knowledge can obtain by learning and reflection. Okay, the third basic of the division into religion and intellectual science. Al-Ghazali defined the religious science al-ulum ash-shari'ah as those which have been acquired from the Prophet and are not regarded either by reason like economic or by experimentation like medicine, by hearing and language. But the intellectual science al-ulum al-aqlah regularly means those sciences which are intended by the human intellect and learn. Nowadays we can see human can create a technology by their creativity, and this knowledge, intellectual science, is limited for IQ human. The four basic of the division into Fardu Ain and Fardu Kifayah. The third Fardu Ain refers to religion obligation that is binding of every Muslim. As for the third Fardu Kifayah, it refers to what is generally and binding for the Muslim community as a whole, but is not necessarily binding for each member of the community.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. My name is Ismail Bin Rosli, metric number 11816110. Next, we go to the third thinker, which is Kutubuddin Ashirazi. How about his classification of the science? Kutubuddin used the term of hikmah as the basis of classification. The distinction between hikmah and non-hikmah form of knowledge constitutes the most fundamental basis of his classification. In Darul At-Taj, he cites numerous Quranic verses to show that Muslim belief in the preeminence of hikmah finds explicit and strong support in Islamic revelation. He was following the tradition of the Ahlul Ma'rifah, which is people of true knowledge, or known as the philosopher. Peripatalik Ibn Sina and Surawardi of the Ishraqi Illuminationists, which is the philosophical school. Next, the hikmah is generic noun representing several signs. Next, we go to the characteristics of hikmah divided by two, which is first to concern the timeless and universal nature of hikmah, and the second pertains to hikmah's essentiality, which is knowing things as they really are. Next, knowledge of the essences or true nature of things is what constitutes the philosophical science. The knowledge of universals constitutes the basis of the conceptual structure of our knowledge of the external world. Next, we are going to the division of hikmah. Kutubuddin has divided the hikmah into two, which is first is the philosophical science and the second is the non-philosophical science, which is known as the religious science. So the philosophical science is divided by two, which is the first is theoretical philosophy and the second is the practical philosophy. Three classes of existence from the theoretical philosophy, which is firstly is completely separate from matter. For example, God, intellects, and soul, or known as this category as the metaphysic, and the second cannot exist except in association with matter, but which can be known without reference to matter. For example, number, geometrical, or this category known as the mathematics. Next is not separate from matter and cannot be known except in association with matter. For example, natural substances, or known as the natural science. So this is the categories, which is firstly the from the theoretical philosophy. Firstly is metaphysics, which is Kutubuddin has divided by two major parts and minor part. Major parts, for example, divine science, first philosophy. Minor parts like science of prophethood, religious authority, eschatology. Next, the mathematics, major parts, for example, geometry, arithmetic, astronomy, music. Minor parts, optics, algebra, weight, surveying, calculation, making, balance, astronomical tables and calendar, and so on. Next, the part of natural science, the major parts, for example, natural things, composite body, generation, meteorology, mineralogy, botany, zoology, psychology. The minor parts, for example, medicine, judicial, astrology, and so on. And then the last part is about logic, which is means deals with the nature of things and traditional Muslim peripatetic division into 9 books of the organon. We go to the next part, which is practical philosophy. Kutubuddin use Aristotle, for example, ethics, economics, and politics. And this practical philosophy concerned with the principle of voluntary human actions and works, which is they use principle of good words, for example, natural and situation. So we go to the next division. Before is philosophical science, and now the next is non-philosophical science, or known as religious science, divided by three. Firstly is Nakli, transmitted. Secondly, Akli, intellectual. And the third, both. They use the term Nakli and Akli, basis of fundamental principle of religion and branches of religious. So we can conclude that this thinker is based on the philosophical ideas that common to all Islamic intellectual school, and this specific to the intellectual and religious worldview of its author and the school he represents. So the philosophical basis we can see from these three thinkers is about the idea of hierarchy and the unity of the science, the distinction between religious and philosophy, which is the revelation and idea. However, this philosophical basis is accepted by all thinkers but differ formulation from each other. So we can conclude that Al-Farabi used the term of hierarchy of science, which is have methodological, ontological, ethical. No specific terminology is used because two groups of science are not mentioned by name. He gives greater prominence to the philosophical science, or so that better known among Muslims, a superior image of philosophical science in relation to the religious science, kalam and fiqh. Philosophy employs the most excellent method of reasoning and proof, demonstrative method. Religious science at best employ the dialectical method. Philosophy and religion are two approaches to the same truth, which is Muslim peripatetic school of philosophers, scientists. No distinction between science on revelation and science based on reason. Order the science in their order of instruction, which is they use the tartibut ta'lim, and more on methodological basis, which is focused on comparison. So next, Al-Ghazali, what we can conclude that he not same from Farabi, which is he distinguished between Sharia, religious science, and Aqliyah, intellectual or rational science. Greater prominence to the religious science, superior to philosophic science. Use the division of knowledge into the religious and the intellectual science related to the Mutakallimun's conception of the relationship between revelation and reason. He used the division of knowledge into Fardu Ain and Fardu Kifayah science. However, Ghazali and Farabi share the view that science of God is the most useful of science. However, but Ghazali gives more attention on religious science. What we conclude from Kutubuddin Al-Razi about his class of science, he divided science to philosophy and non-philosophy. The key term Kutubuddin used is hikmah as a fundamental basis of as a fundamental basis. He emphasized of philosophical science and non-philosophical science, inherits the Fabian distinction that philosophy is what belongs to all humanity in religion, a religion to a particular branch of humanity, use classification of religious science, which is transmitter, intellectual, and both. Finally, is what the conclusion is highest knowledge is knowledge of God. Knowledge of all things other than God must be conceptually and organically related to the knowledge of God. All knowledge comes ultimately from the same source, constitute the idea of the unity of knowledge shared by the three authors. So that's all from us. Thank you.